Greetings, everyone. So today I'm in conversation with Mellisa Francke, who's a clinical educator at the University of Cape Town in the Division of Occupational Therapy, and is also a colleague who works with us in community development practice as part of our team, and has been active in the development of the occupation-based community development framework and implementing it into practice. Mellisa, thank you for making time to join me today.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
Okay. So in today's interview, Mellisa is going to speak to us about an initiative that she started, which is called Career Chats with Mel. And Mellisa, if you could start off with telling us a little bit more about the initiative, please.
So Career Chats with Mel is a blog initiative, basically me sharing stories of people from disadvantaged communities or marginalized communities. And examples of this is places like on the Cape Flats. I myself grew up in Lavender Hill. So it's very much stories that are coming from places like Lavender Hill. And the idea is also to showcase stories of individuals who have decided to, take a particular career path and how they have come to do or make those decisions to do what they do today. And so I do a combination of written pieces where I ask people to write in response to particular questions that I pose to them, and they have the option of writing, sending in a written piece, or engaging with me in a face-to-face conversation, obviously virtually in this time. And so those recorded interviews are on the blog, on the website.
Thank you. So what's your thinking and what motivated you to start these career chats with Mel, and why career chats?
So for me, really, it was about when I look out in the news and I look at my hometown and what is really showcased. It's a lot around the negativity around Lavender Hill, the gang violence, the struggle for access to resources, housing issues. And yes, it is an issue. And yes, those structural, situations that we find, that our communities find themselves in, do impact what they do and are able to do. But I also found that even with my own life experience, that there were critical moments that I engaged with throughout my journey of growing up in a situation like that, or in an environment like that. And just reflecting on what those moments were and what it meant for me in making decisions along the way to get to the place where I am now, able to contribute to the economy, able to sustain my family, that sort of thing. And I thought, there has to be other stories of young people who, despite the environment or the context, were able to navigate through all of that. And perhaps it is to showcase those stories, those decision-making processes, what particular elements were in place or support structures were in place for that to happen. And so I was so surprised that I really didn't have to look so far to locate these stories. And in the birth of the blog, I thought, let me just take a moment to look around me. Who can I actually invite to share stories? And it was really people that ended up being so close, to home. It was recently I added the story of my brother. I mean, he was really the first person in our family to have gone to a college. It was individuals from my high school that I've continued to stay connected with over time. And it was really about, the aim of it is really not to just stay within Lavender Hill, because I know there are other examples like Elsie's River. I found that my cousin has married a beautiful lady from Elsie's River, and she has started her own fashion brand. From her dining room, a lot of people she has dressed, a lot of famous people, and it's not just about showing the famousness, but it's about just that imagination that despite where we come from, this is a possibility, and that's really the aim for what I'm wanting to showcase through this blog.
Mm. So Mellisa, I'm fascinated that you're saying, that when you started this off, you started with looking who's around you. And I think that really resonates with what we've been talking about when we look at community development practice, which is to start from where you are, and to look at what is it in the place that I'm working or the place that I'm living. As Fadia illustrated with the previous interview, is what is it there to be done, and who might I work with, who's already here. So perhaps, of course, we can go and visit Career Chats with Mel, and you'll share the address with us. But how do we, what have you come to learn from engaging with or from the responses that you've received to the questions that you posted interviewing?
So, so really the moment of realization, I knew that the stories that I was going to get was going to be meaningful, but I just with engaging with each individual story, I realized that it's not just perhaps that person's story that is being shared, but it's a reflection really of perhaps many other experiences that, yes, maybe won't get to come onto the platform of Career Chats with Mel, but it's just a showcase that there are many examples of the sort of experiences that is within the context. And so I think one of the interviews I have on the platform is of 3 sisters. They all grew up in one household, but they're different. All 3 has such different experiences of having to navigate certain things. And so, yes, all 3 of them did have to, they share a story of when they were so little and so poor, where they had to, each one, their mommy would send each one of them every day. A different sister would go next door to ask for bread or ask for sugar, or, in that examples of the experiences were the same, but as they grew up, the opportunities that became available for them were different. And so it was so interesting to see how the one sister didn't necessarily have the passion or the zeal or the effort that she wanted to put into the books so she was more interested in what was happening outside, so going with the friends, partying, that sort of thing. But the moment she realized that what she's wanting out of life is not that, and it's something more sustainable for a family, even though she didn't have access to NSFAS bursaries, even though she didn't have access to those financial resources, her journey through studying was a bit longer, but in the end she pushed through. And so it was those subtle elements that, and with another sister, she was able to acquire NSFAS funding. What she chose to do was influenced a lot by teachers on high school, and her and the baby sister as well. And so it just rippled effect. And even though the experiences of what they had access to and resources were different, there were very clear elements of, like, their mom was always that supportive structure. The mom sat up with the elder sister, sat up with the middle sister and with the baby sister when it came to times of exams or, in the middle of the night when they needed to sit up with the books because the road was quiet, the house was quiet enough to study. So it was those elements that really stood out for me, and that what I learned that even though my experience looked differently in my household, there's a house and a story that is reflective of what's happening in the context. And we all had to navigate gang violence. We all had to navigate the lack of resources in our schools, the structures, the classrooms that are so big, and we have to, I don't know, like that was a real struggle for many of us who went to schools in that sort of area, Lavendale High, Steenberg High, you know, all of that. So that's really also what I learned, and that, yeah, just each story is unique, but in its uniqueness, it's also reflective of the community as a whole.
So I think what strikes me about what you're saying, also because, you know, for us as Facing Up, we've been working in Lavendale for a long time, and also use this idea that the narratives that are coming out of Lavendale are often narratives of deficit, and that there are these strengths, and people are actually finding ways to navigate the difficult circumstances, but that the ways that they navigate these difficult circumstances are not always recognized and seen as being effective or seen as being good enough. So what strikes me from what you're saying is that what you're getting from these stories is also that there are multiple narratives, you know, so like you said, your story is different to others, and even between these three sisters, that they had different pathways, and that there's something to be learned from the different ways rather than homogenizing the whole of Lavendale or the Cape Flats and into this deficit way, or saying there's only one pathway that needs to be followed for us to be able to navigate the difficult circumstances. So I just wondered also, you know, that given that people are also, that you're doing some of these interviews during a time of COVID-19, the pandemic, and also all of the inequalities that people are facing. Was there anything particularly about COVID-19, related to COVID-19, that you've gained insight into from these facts?
Yeah. So the one thing is that the platform was birthed out of this, or within this crisis, and the one reason for that, I guess, is a lot of what COVID-19 has brought is the loss of jobs, especially even within our own household. Like creches needed to close, and that was the main source of income for my parents. Was the fact that the creche needed to close, and now it's the very, very high possibility that it probably won't open for the rest of the year. Because parents are not wanting to send, which is understandable. And so with the career chats with Mel, I thought, you know what, I want to also showcase innovative ideas that our young people are sitting with and that they have, you know, established. And partly some of those stories are still coming. And so I encourage everyone to keep an eye out. And it's really about the one that I am wanting to showcase is not to say that you have to, you know, rely on a university certificate. It might be such an idea that you have inside of you, and you might just need support and structures around you, or people who you can call on for guidance. How do I set up this small business initiative, or how do I grow this passion into something that can be an income for my family? And one of those ideas is a well-known barber. I think his passion was just to cut hair, and everyone in Steenberg knows who he is, and he's well thought of. When it's big days, the lines are long, and guys don't mind waiting for their haircut with this particular barber. And it's, you know, it's those skillful, eventually went to a college, and he got some training, but it was really about the passion that came before that. And with the money that he was able to gain from the haircuts, he then went to school. So the career chats with Mel was that this is why it was birthed, I guess, in this crisis, is to showcase that there is opportunity around us for us to generate income and not to just rely on the certificate that you're going to be getting at university. But there is entrepreneurial opportunity. That's the one thing. But also, what was real for me is some of the stories that has been shared. You know, one of the sisters, she went and studied, and during the crisis lost her job, and so it's now showcasing that. But what also stood out for me was even though she's lost her job, she's navigated her resources to her immediate street and the children. So she studied to be an ECD teacher. And this is one of the young ladies as part of the 3 sisters that was shared. And she, whatever printing material she had in her house, paper, crayons, she's asked for some donations for crayons. I remember calling out for some donations, and she was just putting out little packs. Using her skill, she doesn't have the income right now, but she still remained passionate about the kids in her road who weren't getting stimulated. And so it just also showcased the type of heart and soul that you're going to find in communities like that. You know, they're not just going look inward towards their household, but always this thing about looking out for the next person, or the children in the road, or the ones who don't have access to food. So during this period of COVID-19, I've learned, you know, also a lot just from the sharing of the stories and how people were affected. Another positive thing is that with one of the careers that we explored, which is fitting and turning, and my brother's in that field, and he shared his story, and he's saying he could really see how, you know, artisan or the skill-based work was really during this time also part of the frontline or essential services, because the company, yes, serves shops, but to live, we're going to have to go and buy groceries and stuff like that. So, you know, he's at the end where he's in the machinery, making sure that machines are working for the yogurt, for the cheese, for the whatever we're going to consume. And so you don't really think about, you know, those artisan type of work, fitting and turning, electrical engineering, plumbing. So people's pipes and things are always going to burst. You know, there's always these issues are going to come up. And so he was saying really you could see how what he chose to do as a profession, you know, even through moments of crisis, he was able to find work. So that's really also a learning experience for me. Sometimes you always want to glorify, oh, the doctors are all on the front line. And I'm not saying that what they are doing is not important, but it's also showcasing these other opportunities or other things that are out there that are just as essential as the ones are making it in the media at the moment.
So it's really, I mean, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that it's really broadening the perspective of how we think about work, how we think about what resourcefulness is within communities, and how communities really self-mobilize to use what they have to connect with each other. So just as a last question, Mellisa, what would be your take-home message to practitioners and people who are thinking about how to connect with issues that affect individuals, but also the difficult systems that we find ourselves in?
So for me, you know, it's really about thinking about our communities who don't have access to various resources, and to use ourselves, also as occupational therapists, as a particular resource, I guess, in a way, to expand that for communities like Lavender Hill, communities on the Cape Flats, townships, where a lot of where they are and what they are doing is in those contexts, and the context comes with a lot of limitations, and I think that's where we are having to also think about. In order for them to come to Grootskeur, they're going to have to navigate public transport, and public transport right now looks, it's a lot risky here for them to travel in a public transport, where it's easy for us to just hop into our cars, and we don't have to think about the risk of contracting COVID. What does it mean for us to, as occupational therapists, to work within those contexts, whether it is to partner with local gardens as a resource for food. There is a bakery in Kailija called Spinach King, and he's created, from the ground up, literally, bread, for the community at a cheaper price with healthy ingredients. And it's about working with those sort of initiatives that is from the community, and it's going to be building up and providing jobs for people within that particular community. So yes, it's easy for us to walk to Checkers to go buy a bread, but what about those initiatives that are aiming to improve the livelihoods of people, but also provide jobs? And so it's trying to find other ways of doing with people, and not for them. So, and for us to be saying, oh, this is what I think, needs to be done. A lot of the times the answers we are looking for is going to be within that context and from the people themselves. And it's just about using ourselves, I guess, as a resource. As occupational, to partner with them and to support whatever idea or initiative they have looming in their background, but they may just need the support and like, I guess, showcasing them different perspectives that are possible. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mellisa, for sharing that. I think, the power of connecting the individual narratives with broadening the perspective to understand it in terms of the systemic social and occupational injustices that people face. In terms of thinking about broadening the narratives around resourcefulness is really powerful and gives us something more to think about as we, as occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech therapists, and community workers, really start to think about how might we make our services more accessible to broader communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashan. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.